After installing the virtualization software for Elmjo company, now we will have to just install operating system so that we can install our domain controller and then we can install our Exchange server. So as I said in our previous videos, that one of the requirements for Exchange server is a domain controller. So in this lab, our scenario is for our Sacramento office, and it tells us to install a virtualization. Like after installing the virtualization application, you need to install Windows Server 2012 Enterprise Edition for Elmjo company, and then you need to configure the domain controller. So once you install the operating system, then you will have to configure the domain controller, and the system settings and hardware settings are as below. So we will have to use the minimum RAM of 1 GB and 20 GB of the storage, and server name should be SAC-EJO D01, which is again a naming convention for the Elmjo company. So the Elmjo company wants to use a naming convention which is going to start from the city and then the company name and then the function of that system. So Sacramento, Elmjo, and then domain controller 01, and then they just want to use 10.10.254.53 for the domain controller, and then the subnet mask of 255.255.255.0. So this is going to be our lab, and let's get started. So I'm gonna bring up VMware Workstation Pro again, and then once we have the VMware Workstation console in here, I just want to quickly show you something where I might not have shown you before. So these two folders that you see in here, these are the ones that I just created so that I can put my operating systems like separately on these folders so that you can know that which server belongs to where. I'm just going to quickly remove them so that I can show you how to create them. And what I'm gonna do now is, like, it is blank and nothing is in here. I'm gonna right click in here and say new folder, and then I'll just write Sacramento office, and then again for our New York, I'm just gonna type New York office. So now when I'm just going to, whenever I'm going to create a domain controller or Exchange server operating systems, whenever I'm going to create a new virtual machine, I'm going to just create it in here for Sacramento, and for New York I'm just going to create in here. So that way it will be easier for us to know which server belongs to where. So creating a new virtual machine is easy. So you have three options, like three ways to create it. The first thing is, if you click on home for VMware Workstation, you have an option create a new virtual machine. Or if you just right click on this blank space, you have a new virtual machine option. Or if you click on file, you have a new virtual machine option. So three new ways. Or if you just say just push Control N, it's gonna create a new virtual machine. So once you click on create a new virtual machine, it's gonna give you like which type of configuration you want. So the first one is typical and the second one is custom. I'm gonna use typical because custom is mostly used when you want to customize your disk types and many other things. So when you click on next, it's going to ask you for the disk of operating system. So we are going to install server 2012, and I already have a ISO image which is in my D drive. And as you can see that this is great because right now I don't have any CD inserted inside my physical hardware or physical server or physical machine. That's why it's not it's grayed out. So I have just selected this option, and then I will install operating system later is used if you want to install operating system later and just create your virtual machine first. Click on next. It's gonna ask for product key, username, password. These are all optionals, and I'm just gonna create on next. Click on next, and then it is asking me for virtual machine name again. the virtual machine name for us is going to be SAC ejo DC01. And then the location is very important. Never put your virtual machines into C drive, because C drive is your system drive and maybe you have less space on it. So always use like drive D, drive E, or any other drive that have more space. So what I'm gonna do in here is I'm gonna click on this folder that I already created, Sacramento Virtual Machines, SAC ejo DC01. So that's how you can create your folders for your virtual machines, so that you can find them easily while you need them, or you want to import them into a virtual machine. So this is going to be our hard disk size, and I'm just gonna use it as a 20 GB. That's what we want to use for our educational purposes. But when you are working on a real environment or production environment, you will always follow your company's policies and your requirements, like whatever your requirements are, like how much data you're using on a daily basis. So it all depends, like based on your requirements. Next, and it's gonna give you the summary and power on this virtual machine after creation. So as you can see that once I click on finish, it just powered it on, and then it's now loading the files for server 2012. So let me make this one as a full screen, so that it's going to be easier for you all to see um, how the installation looks like. So the setup is starting. That's the first thing that you will see. So now, as you can see, that it is copying Windows files, and this is the setup. So once it copies the Windows files, it's going to restart, and then you will be able to start your server operating system. So I'm just going to pause the video here because it's going to take time, and we will just get back once this process is done. Alright, so after the installation process, the server 2012 is now installed, and you can see that the server manager just pops up when you start your server every time. And the other thing that I just want to show you in here is that if you see now, this SAC ejo DC01 is now created in your VMware workstation, but it is not inside your Sacramento office. If I try to move it in here, you can see that now it is in your Sacramento office folder. So you're just managing your virtual machines. It's nothing else than that. So now the second objective that we have in here is to make sure that the PC we have in here is having a name of SAC ejo DC01. So if you click on start, right click, and then click on properties, and then advanced system settings, computer name, you can see that this is the full computer name that we have. So this thing in here is the virtual machine name, but the system name or the computer name is something different, and you will have to assign a computer name. So always make sure that whenever you assign a virtual machine name, it's not gonna affect the computer name whenever you are working with VMware Workstation. So I will click on change, and then I will name it SAC ejo DC01 and click on OK. Once you click on OK, it's going to ask you to restart your computer or you restart your server to take all those effects. So I'm gonna click on restart later because I want to show you some other stuffs. So one other thing that you see in here is right now it is network and internet access. Why? Because for the first time when you install your operating system using VMware Workstation, it is configured through network address translation, and it is directly connected to your physical machine um, um, network card. So that's why this server have access to the internet. So most of the time whenever you are working on your office, you are trying to do practice when you're in office and you want to build a lab. So always make sure that this is not connected to your internet, because sometimes your organization may not want you to connect like operating system test operating systems to your physical network, because right now it is connected to my physical network. So if I go in here and type cmd and then um, I do ipconfig, it's gonna show me the IP address. So this is 192.168.153.128. Same thing, if I just come to my physical machine and let me just show you. So this is my physical machine and I do ipconfig. Now if you see in here, you will see that it is having the range of 0.15 something like that. So for example, this is my physical machine, and the one that you see in here is my virtual machine. So if I do ping 192.168.153.128, I cannot ping it because maybe the firewall is on or something, but this server really have access to the internet because it is this network adapter is connected directly to my physical network adapter, and they have linked together. That's why they are able to access the domain. So that's why they're able to access the internet. Sorry. So what are we going to do now is we're going to make sure that the IP address is assigned to it. So if I right click on this network icon and then click on open network and sharing center, and then click on change adapter centers, right click here and click on properties and TCP/IP version 4, you can see that right now there's no static IP address assigned 10.10.254 .53 based on our lab. It should be 255.255.255.0. We got no default gateway right now. We don't have any router, so we only have a single network right now, so we do not need any default gateway. So whenever you have two different networks like 10.11 and 10.12, that's the time when you need default gateway to allow your 10.10 network to communicate with 10.11 or any other network. So right now I don't have any default gateway. I'm just going to use it. So I just want to use same address for my primary DNS address. Alright, so once you clicked on that, now you can see that the IP address is changed. That's why you got this icon in here. Um, we assigned the IP address and we also assigned the name to it. So we are good to go, I think. So one other thing that I just want to show you quickly is when you right click on your virtual machine, always make sure that your network adapter is configured to host only. So used to share the host IP address. So this NAT is only used when you want to share, do the network address translation, and that's why you had access to the internet. But host only is a private shared with the host. So what you want to do in here is you want to allow your other virtual machines to have access to this virtual machine, like we are going to install an exchange server in our next videos. So we want our exchange server operating system to communicate with this domain controller, so we want the option to be host only. to allow those virtual machines to talk to each other. So always make sure that you just use host only with all your virtual machines, just to make it more uh, reliable. So this is how you can install an operating system, and this is how we installed operating system for our Sacramento office domain controller. The next video is going to be the lab to on how are we going to install our domain controller for the Elmjo Tech company. I hope this was useful and you learned something, and I'll see you on next video.